They laughed when he walked into the luxury car showroom, grease still staining his hands, his shirt faded from years of hard work in the garage. They laughed because he didn't belong there, at least, not in their world of million-dollar engines and tailored suits. And no one laughed louder than her, the young, brilliant, powerful seer who believed some people were destined to shine and others to stay in the shadows. But she didn't know that destiny can shift in an instant. That sometimes the one you mock is the one who changes your life forever. This is the story of a poor mechanic who was given an impossible challenge, and the woman who thought she was untouchable until he touched her heart. Ethan Clark had always been a quiet soul, more comfortable with the hum of engines than with the chatter of people. In a small-town garage tucked away at the edge of Manchester, England, he spent his days repairing beat-up sedans, delivery vans, and the occasional motorcycle. His customers loved him because he never cheated them, never charged more than he should, and always gave every job his full effort even when he barely made enough to cover rent. His father had taught him two things before passing away: work with pride, no matter how small the job, and respect people, even if they don't respect you. Ethan lived by that creed every day. One rainy afternoon, a sleek black limousine pulled into the gas station across from his garage. Even from a distance, Ethan noticed it was a rare model, something you'd only see in magazines. The car door opened, and out stepped Amelia Whitmore, a name known in every business headline from London to New York. She was the youngest CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, a luxury car manufacturer that had dominated Europe and was expanding to the US. Tall, elegant, and sharp-eyed, Amelia carried herself like royalty. And to the townsfolk, that's exactly what she was. She had money, influence, and power, but most of all, she had pride. Her car had broken down on the way to a high-profile investor meeting. Mechanics from the city had already been called, but Amelia, in her impatience, crossed the street with her driver and entered Ethan's garage. She scanned the oil-stained floor, the smell of gasoline heavy in the air, and then looked at Ethan. Her lips curved into a smirk. "Do you even know what a Whitmore V12 engine is?" she asked mockingly, her voice dripping with superiority. Ethan simply wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. "An engine's an engine. It just needs to breathe again." The men in suits behind her chuckled. Amelia tilted her head, amused at his calmness. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "If you can fix this, I don't know. I'll marry you." Laughter erupted from her entourage, but Amelia's eyes stayed locked on Ethan, waiting for him to shrink away. Instead, he just smiled faintly and replied, "Then I'd better do it right." Something in his tone, quiet yet unshakable, made her pause, but only for a second. To her, he was still just a poor mechanic, hopelessly out of his league. The limousine was rolled into Ethan's modest garage, dwarfing the tiny space. The V12 engine, a masterpiece of engineering, sat under the hood silent and lifeless. Amelia stood nearby with her arms crossed, scrolling through her phone as if the entire thing was just entertainment for her. Her driver muttered, "Miss Whitmore, maybe we should wait for the company mechanics." "This man doesn't even have the right tools." Amelia didn't answer, though the smirk on her face said everything. Ethan examined the engine carefully. It wasn't just broken, it was sabotaged. Something deep inside had been tampered with, a piece misaligned in a way no regular mechanic would notice. Sweat beaded his forehead as he reached for his wrenches and pliers. Time slipped by as he worked, his hands moving with both delicacy and strength. For him, engines weren't just machines, they were like puzzles, each one with a hidden heartbeat waiting to be unlocked. Amelia, pretending not to watch, found her eyes drifting toward him again and again. There was something strangely captivating about the way he worked, not rushed, not panicked, just steady and confident. His brow furrowed, his rough hands moved with surprising precision, and every now and then he muttered softly, as if speaking to the engine itself. She was annoyed at herself for noticing. 2 hours passed. The men in suits had grown restless, and one of them whispered, "This is ridiculous, he's going to fail." But suddenly, Ethan stepped back, wiped his hands, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. The deep, perfect sound of the V12 filled the garage, smooth as silk, powerful as thunder. Everyone froze. Even Amelia's phone slipped from her hand as she stared at the car in disbelief. Ethan didn't gloat, he simply said, "It wasn't impossible." just needed someone to care enough to look closely. For the first time, Amelia found herself at a loss for words. Something shifted in her chest: confusion, admiration, something she couldn't name. She covered it quickly with a scarf. Well, looks like even broken things can surprise you. But deep down, she felt the smallest crack in her armor. And Ethan, he just returned to wiping his hands, unaware that he had just altered the course of both their lives forever. Word spread through the town faster than wildfire. A poor mechanic had done the impossible, revived a Whitmore engine that even the company's own engineers had declared unfixable. Some said it was luck, others called it skill. Ethan paid no attention to the gossip. He simply returned to his daily work, but Amelia couldn't forget. Something about the look in his eyes when he fixed that engine haunted her. She was used to men trying to impress her with power and wealth, but Ethan hadn't tried at all. He had simply done what he loved, and it had unsettled her in ways she didn't want to admit. That night, as her limousine glided back through the city streets, Amelia found herself thinking not about the investors waiting for her, but about the man in the grease-stained shirt whose hands could coax life out of steel. A week later, Amelia returned to Ethan's garage under the pretense of a follow-up. She arrived in another luxury car, dressed immaculately, and walked in as if the place belonged to her. Ethan looked up from a motorcycle engine and raised an eyebrow. "Another broken car?" he asked with a faint smile. Amelia brushed her hair over her shoulder. "No, just curiosity." She glanced around at the humble garage. "Why waste your talent here? You could be working for someone like me, in state-of-the-art facilities, making more in a month than you do in a year." Ethan shook his head. "Money doesn't fix everything. Here, people come to me because they trust me. That's worth more than a paycheck." His words disarmed her. For the first time in years, Amelia didn't have a ready comeback. Despite herself, Amelia started visiting more often. Sometimes she brought one of her company's cars, pretending it needed checking. Other times, she came with no excuse at all. She would stand near the workbench, asking Ethan questions about engines, about life, even about his late father. He spoke of his father with quiet pride, and each word revealed the depth of his character. Amelia listened, and though she never admitted it out loud, she found herself drawn to the warmth in his voice, the steadiness in his gaze. In her world of corporate sharks and endless competition, Ethan's simplicity felt like a breath of air she had, and she realized she was suffocating without. But not everyone welcomed this unlikely connection. Amelia's board of directors caught wind of her friendship with a small-town mechanic. At a board meeting in London, her closest advisor sneered, "Miss Whitmore, your image is everything. Being seen with someone like him, it's reckless. Investors will question your judgment." Amelia brushed it off, but their words lingered. That night, she stared at her reflection in the glass walls of her penthouse, asking herself why she cared what a mechanic thought of her. And yet, the answer was clear, because when she was with him, she felt human again. Meanwhile, Ethan wrestled with his own emotions. He had never met a woman like Amelia, intelligent, fierce, yet secretly fragile. But he reminded himself daily, she was a CEO, and he was just a mechanic. Their worlds weren't meant to collide. His friends at the diner teased him, saying he'd caught the attention of the Ice Queen of London. Ethan laughed it off, but inside, he was torn between hope and fear. Their fragile bond was tested when Amelia invited him to an exclusive corporate gala in London. She said it was to show gratitude, but her eyes told a different story. Ethan reluctantly agreed, borrowing an old suit from a friend. When he entered the grand ballroom filled with glittering chandeliers and champagne glasses, every eye turned toward him. Whispers spread like wildfire. Amelia walked by his side with her chin held high, but Ethan could feel the judgment pressing in from every corner. A wealthy rival leaned in close to Amelia and sneered, "Trading engines for diamonds now, Miss Whitmore." Ethan wanted to disappear, but then Amelia slipped her hand into his and said firmly, "He's worth more than all your fortunes combined." For the first time, Ethan realized she was willing to fight for him. The fallout was immediate. Newspapers snapped photos, headlines buzzed, and social media erupted with debates. CEO Amelia Whitmore spotted with mechanic romance or folly. Her board grew furious, warning her of scandal. Amelia faced a choice: distance herself from Ethan to save her reputation, or stand by him and risk everything. That evening, She sat in her office staring at a blank contract, her heart aching. For a woman who had built empires, the hardest decision wasn't about business, it was about love. Ethan, seeing the chaos his presence had caused in her world, made a painful decision. He called her late one night. "Amelia, maybe this was never meant to be. You don't need someone like me dragging you down." His voice was steady, but his heart was breaking. Amelia clenched the phone, tears threatening to fall. "Don't you dare decide what I need," she whispered. But Ethan hung up before she could finish. Alone in his dark garage, he wondered if he'd done the right thing or the biggest mistake of his life. Days turned into weeks. Amelia buried herself in work, but nothing filled the emptiness. Ethan worked longer hours at the garage, but even engines couldn't distract him from the hollow ache inside. Then fate intervened. A massive international car show was held in Paris, where Whitmore Enterprises planned to unveil their newest prototype. But hours before the presentation, the prototype's engine failed catastrophically. Panic swept through the team. Investors threatened to walk out. And Amelia, standing backstage, thought of only one name. She flew across the channel to Ethan's garage in the dead of night. Bursting through the doors, drenched from the rain, she found him tightening bolts on an old truck. "Ethan," she gasped, "I need you. The Paris prototype is dead, and only you can fix it." Ethan looked at her with guarded eyes. "Why me? You have the best engineers in Europe." Her voice cracked for the first time. "Because they see machines, you see hearts." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then Ethan sighed, grabbed his tools, and said, "Let's go." In Paris, the prototype sat under the spotlight, lifeless. The company's engineers glared at Ethan with disdain. "This is absurd," one muttered. "A back alley mechanic touching our masterpiece." But Amelia stood firm. "Let him work." Ethan ignored the whispers and got to work. For hours, he studied the engine, tracing each line of failure until he found the flaw. His hands moved quickly, and his eyes lit with determination. Amelia watched from the shadows, her heart pounding. She realized she wasn't just watching a man fix an engine, she was watching him save her future. Minutes before the unveiling, Ethan turned the key. The prototype roared to life, its sound so pure and powerful it silenced the entire hall. The investors erupted in applause, journalists rushed forward, and Amelia's competitors were left speechless. In that moment, Ethan didn't just fix an engine, he saved an empire. Amelia rushed to him, her eyes shining. "You did it," she whispered. He met her gaze with quiet pride. "We did it," and for the first time, she didn't hide the truth. She kissed him in front of the world. The kiss sent shockwaves across Europe. News outlets spun the story into legend. The poor mechanic who saved Whitmore Enterprises and stole the CEO's heart. Some mocked it, others romanticized it. But one thing was certain. The world would never see Amelia Whitmore the same way again. Her board of directors tried to protest, but Amelia silenced them. "You hired me to lead. And I choose to lead with truth." Ethan, overwhelmed, tried to retreat back to his quiet life, but Amelia refused to let him disappear. "You've spent your whole life fixing engines," she told him. "Maybe it's time you let someone fix your heart." Their relationship blossomed, but challenges remained. Amelia's world demanded perfection, while Ethan valued simplicity. She was used to lavish dinners in Paris. He preferred fish and chips at the corner shop. Sometimes their differences sparked arguments. One evening, after a particularly heated fight, Amelia snapped, "Maybe they were right, you don't belong in my world." The instant the words left her lips, regret flooded her face. Ethan's expression hardened, and he walked out into the night. Amelia sat alone, realizing that her pride, the very thing she once mocked him with, was now her greatest enemy. Ethan didn't return for days. He drove his old truck through the countryside, seeking clarity. He remembered his father's words, "Respect people, even if they don't respect you." He wondered if Amelia truly respected him or if he was just another conquest in her world of power. Meanwhile, Amelia sat in her penthouse, staring at the city lights, her chest aching. For the first time, she realized love wasn't about control, but about humility. And she knew she had to fight for him not as a CEO, but as a woman who loved a man. She found him back at the garage, working late into the night. Her heels clicked against the concrete floor as she approached, her eyes wet with tears. "Ethan," she whispered, "I was wrong, you don't belong in my world." I belong in yours, he froze, turning slowly to face her. Do you mean that? She nodded, her voice trembling. I don't want the suits, the headlines, or the wealth. I just want you. Grease stains and all, for the first time in weeks, Ethan's hardened expression softened. Their reconciliation was quiet but powerful. Amelia began spending more time in the small town, learning to embrace Ethan's simple world. She helped in the garage, clumsily handing him tools, laughing when she got oil on her designer dress. The townsfolk, once skeptical, grew to love her. They saw not the cold CEO, but a woman who was slowly finding her heart. Ethan, in turn, learned to stand taller, realizing he wasn't just a poor mechanic anymore, he was a man whose worth couldn't be measured in money. Months passed, and their love only deepened. Amelia's company thrived, not just because of its innovations, but because she led with a new kind of vision, one rooted in humility and respect. Investors admired her transformation, but more importantly, Amelia herself was finally happy. For years, she had chased power, but with Ethan, she found something far greater: peace. On a warm summer evening, Amelia invited Ethan to a private event at the Whitmore estate. Nervously, he asked, "What's this about?" She only smiled. In front of friends, family, and townsfolk, Amelia stood on stage and said, "Months ago, I made a joke. I said if he fixed the impossible, I'd marry him. Well, he did. And today, I'm keeping my word." Ethan's heart pounded as Amelia knelt, holding a small silver ring. "Ethan Clark, will you marry me?" The crowd erupted in cheers. Ethan pulled her up into his arms, his voice breaking. "You don't know what you're asking for." She smiled through tears. "I know exactly what I'm asking for forever." They kissed, sealing their promise. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the poor mechanic and the powerful CEO stood hand in hand, proving that love isn't about wealth or status. It's about respect, humility, and finding someone who sees your heart when the rest of the world only sees the surface. And so, what began as a mockery ended as destiny, an unexpected love story that reminded everyone watching. Sometimes the greatest engines in life aren't the ones we build, but the ones we dare to believe in.